It's Mark and Pete.
Hello and welcome to the show. More colourful conversations with Mark and Pete. Each week, clergyman Pete and businessman Mark tackle a topical subject. Now on this week's show, we debate, are teachers hopeless or helpless? Well, we have seen in recent times that teacher shortages have caused many issues with government officials. In fact, the angst is growing. And why is this? Well, statistics show that teacher shortages, in England in particular, is really starting to miss many of the government targets, certainly over the last 4 to 5 years. Now, why is this? Well, remarkably, some of the statistics actually show that it means around 28% of secondary physics lessons are only taught by teachers with no more than an A level, that's an advanced level in the subject, and do not actually have a degree. That's according to the National Audit Office. Well, there are many implications on this. Are we actually now starting to breed a load of dimwits? Or are we actually starting to see that really we just simply can't afford education? Are we going to have to go down the route of paying for our teachers and spend more on education? Well, let's ask clergyman Pete the big question. So then, Pete, would you like to be going to school today?
No, I wouldn't, businessman Mark. I feel that the problems in education have been getting worse. Partly, I think, through the fact that, as you sort of intimated, we really can't afford the sheer numbers that we're teaching these days, up to 16 and sometimes up to 18 years of age. So many people being educated in schools. The country as a whole can't afford it to be paid through national insurance and taxation, and therefore we're not putting enough money into paying teachers, into training them, etc., etc. But also, I think that there's an added problem of discipline, lack of discipline in the schools. Now, maybe we can talk later if we have time in this episode about why it is that there's a lack of discipline, but that there is a lack of discipline across the state sector of schools is broadly accepted, that there are always problems with discipline in each school. It might be minor, but in some schools it's virtually out of hand. And
Yes.
This needs to be addressed before you can even get to actually educating the pupils in the subjects that you want. First, they need to learn how to behave.
Yes. Well, I think what we need to do here is to try and get to understand why is it that we are seeing a shortage of teachers coming into the profession. Mm-hmm. Now, there is an irony here because the overall number of teachers has kept pace with the rising pupil numbers. So you talked about the numbers, which actually is one challenge for the government. But the teacher shortages are particularly growing in the poorer areas, as noticed, and at secondary level in particular. So I think we're going to sort of try and understand is that what are the implications by this? Is it that we are just simply not paying them enough? Or when we look at the question hopeless or helpless, I'll draw on the helpless side. Maybe we're just not giving them the right conditions, the right tools to do their job. Well, look, here's a little poem which sort of provokes a little bit more thought in terms of the implications of not having good teachers. This is a poem called Classroom Gloom, Ode to Absent Teachers. Boys and girls come out to play, all the teachers have gone away. Education has had its day, ignorance now is here to stay. Leave your homework and go to sleep, become the family's little black sheep. Come with no hope, come with a fall, come with a goodwill or not at all. Up the social ladder and down the town hall, who the hell will serve us all? You find the milk, and I'll find the grain, and we'll have great puddings with half a brain. Yes, are we really educating people to the right standard? Well, I know that little poem was a little bit flippant based upon the nursery rhyme of boys and girls come out to play. But at one time, boys and girls came out to play with fine education and fine qualifications and fine standards. But it is remarkable that more than half of head teachers in schools with large proportions of disadvantaged pupils are finding it very, very difficult to attract the right teachers. It's a major problem. And compared with other schools, particularly if you look at more affluent areas, they are attracting the right caliber of teachers. So I guess the question, Clergyman Pete, here is, what does the government do to readdress the problem?
Well, if you're looking at attracting the right sort of applicant to a teaching post, salary is part of the package, but also there's career development, and then there's the conditions of the job and support offered to enable you to do your job well. And this is a whole has to be holistic in an approach. It has to be a whole school. In fact, really, a whole education system approach. It needs more resources put in, and it needs standards to be adhered to. To give you an example, in a school, if you can have a discipline system in place that teachers can enforce in order to control the class, therefore, you've got a good working environment in which to educate the children. But with that system being in place on paper, if in practice the leadership in the school doesn't follow through, because obviously it's always easier not to have to be the tough guy, have to enforce discipline, make you unpopular, often with parents and certainly with the pupils concerned. It's always easier to let things slide. And if that does happen, of course, reputation gets around, and that school is not going to attract good teachers, and then that gets the school gets worse because it hasn't got good teachers, and it goes on and on. But there are the other big area where there's a problem with having a good working environment for the teachers so that he or she can get on with their job is in the area of the law about children and education. And the laws that have been passed do allow for discipline in schools, but they also give many rights to children, stemming from, it was the Children's Act in 1988, which seemed to shift the balance of rights from the teachers and the adults to the children. And this has been noted many, many times, and I think it may be a major reason why it's difficult to get teachers to go, especially into the state sector, because they fear that children, and I've got a quote here from someone a teacher who was falsely arrested for supposedly having assaulted a boy, whereas in fact it was the other way around. This is a case a few years ago now, from 2009, but it's just an example. And what he said is, a lot of children know their rights but not their responsibilities, and they will tell their teachers, "I can get you sacked," and that is the big problem. You're putting yourself at risk by going into the profession. Why would you do that?
Yes. Well, I think it's a very good question. And of course, the other issue, of course, is the government has been guilty. And when I say the government, that's successive governments over the last 15 to 20 years of changing the curriculum.
Yes.
So if we look at that alone, just on subject matter, there are a number of key subjects that are deemed to be the pillars of education, which help pave the way for people to come into, industry, as well as education, but throughout society. So what I'm going to ask you here is that if you look at the subjects that are taught in secondary schools in particular, ironically, 14 out of 17 positions have been unfilled in training colleges. Right. Now, that's quite remarkable, but let me ask you the question of which subjects seem to suffer the most. So if we look at the percentages of places filled and those that haven't. So I guess turning it another way, which of the subjects which are finding it difficult to attract the right caliber? Okay,
now just going from my experience when I was a teacher looking for jobs and seeing which subjects offered the greatest bonuses if you were going to apply, I would say that now that's a few years ago when we're talking well over a decade ago when I was in that position. So let's but I'm going to use that as my base. I would say that the worst subject area would be maths.
Well,
That's
actually, ironically, maths,
Followed by-
albeit that it does have a shortfall, isn't the worst subject. It has about 93%
maths, then
to
science.
the target.
Science.
Yes, so it's doing okay. It's doing okay, but pick a different subject.
Oh well, I'm thinking science. So
Science.
I could.
Do you want to break that down into any specific science?
Well, I mean, teaching is normally done of the sciences together these days. So in a school, I guess it would be science. But if you're talking about a specialism, I imagine that physics is the one that's finding it difficult.
Well, indeed.
Well, simply, and the reason is the reason my feeling is that physics is difficult, and the pupils find it.
Physics is one of those subjects that is very difficult to find people with that type of specialism.
Yes,
there is an irony here that in a world of great technology, and here we are in the 21st century, you sort of look at attracting people into a profession that can help nurture a generation into design and technology. Design and technology is one of those that suffers. I suppose one of the reasons is the fact that they're lured by other sectors, particularly in the private sector, technology companies paying considerably more than, say, a teacher on an average wage.
Yes.
And I would almost go as far as to say that possibly somebody with great design skills, technology or software skills are going to be able to command at least twice as much in their salaries. So there again, I think that's an issue. You're right about the difficulty of the subject, but I think one of the factors is that it's the competition, and that is that industry can lure the best. And if you can command the best, you're going to get the best. And teaching is not necessarily the highest priority.
Yes.
I wanted to sort of ask you a question, turning it the other way, which is the proportion of trainee teachers with a 2-1 degree or above. Mm-hmm. So we talked about the standards. Let's talk about standards. So this is the percentage of postgraduate entrants. So there's a league table, if you like, of the average for all trainee entrants, and then what that equated to in terms of those who could qualify with a 2-1 degree or above.
Right.
Now, again, which subject do you think suffers the most?
Oh, which suffers from having undereducated, least number with 2-1 or above.
Yes.
Let's see. Well, I'm going to go for the similar. Well, I was going to say I'm going to go for the similar subjects. So I'm going to say that probably maths is number one.
Well, it's not far off, actually, but you go back to your favorite subject, which, of course, was physics.
Physics, yes.
And then it's actually, ironically, in the science-based subject. So you talked about maths, chemistry is another one, and so on.
Yes.
Interestingly enough, those who, let's talk about the positive, and I don't want to diminish the subject because it's very important, history has a higher level of people.
Yes.
Strangely enough, drama has a...
Well, the thing is, looking at that, you can at that subject area having problems, you can see that someone who's attracted to physics and therefore becomes good at physics is not necessarily the sort of person who would be attracted to education, and so that's why to some extent there's a disparity, but also that when you get into the classroom, you can have lots of people who hate your subject, so it's. Yes. If there's one subject where the problem is that you simply don't understand what on earth is going on, then physics is probably number one, because it has that certain level that you have to be able to understand abstract thinking before you can even start to appreciate the subject at all. So I can see that would be a problem. But I think that there's another issue to do with just teachers generally finding work in schools unattractive as opposed to working as a trainer in industry and that sort of thing, and that is the amount of paperwork that's associated with the job and out of school working hours. I mean, they must work evenings and weekends in order to be able to produce lessons that are of good enough quality. And actually, I guess if your kids are poorly behaved, you probably have less marking to do because they don't hand in the homework. But you still got to construct lessons that interest them. Otherwise, they're going to be even harder to control. So you end up spending hours and hours when you should be out of work. You should be enjoying yourself, just working. So it removes all your social life, and the whole life revolves around the teaching. And if that's not an enjoyable experience, then of course you're not going to go into it in the first place. And I reckon you're going to leave it pretty quickly, even if you've started. And I think that is the other issue, that teachers just don't stay in the profession.
No. Well, I mean, I know that we're coming to the end of this episode, but I mean, just on sort of reflection, and it is part of the curriculum, but if I take one subject, religion, what would the Bible say about the importance of education?
Yes, we haven't mentioned religious studies, but let's just have a religious study of education. The quote from the Bible that I like to use is Ecclesiastes 12, verse 12, which says, "Of the making of many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body," which has a certain point of recognition for all those who have had to study or tried to teach. But education is very important, and the Bible does reflect that, and it talks about fathers, but this could be teachers if we apply it to schools today. First, it says, Ephesians 6, verse 4 says, "Do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." Instruction is very important. It must be done with discipline, but it must also be done with care. And someone who's going to be that involved in the lives of their children, care for them that much, needs to be paid well and needs to have the support structure in place. The Bible takes education that seriously because it is so important. We need to take it just as seriously today.
Yes. Well, I mean, I know a lot of people in government are extremely concerned about this. I mean, attracting teachers is vital to the lifeblood of all our areas of society. So I'm going to just sort of set up a final thought here with another little poem. It's called A Question of Learning. Where are the intellectual diversities once taught in the nation's universities? Where is the deep nurtured knowledge once learnt in the college? Where is inspirational evolution once installed in the institution? Where do we now forge our true vocation once in the fabric of our foundation? Where are the folk who are discerning, once championed by solid learning? Where are the boffins and the brilliant tutors, once cleverer than the digital computers? Are we just left with the empty school that qualifies Britain as a public fool? Well, I mean, we asked the question at the beginning, listeners, are teachers hopeless or just simply helpless? What do you think about this subject? Let us know by dropping us a line on the contact form. Log on to markandpete.com and let us know. So join us again next time for more colourful conversations with Mark and Pete.